So what I wanted to talk about today is I want to talk about there are some essential tips when it comes to leadership. There's countless. You talk in effective communication, what people refer to as time management, delegation, problem solving, etc. But of those, there's a couple I'm going to just focus on, and I'm going to keep it short, simple, straight to the point. So one of the things that I want to talk about is effective communication, and then we're going to go into team building. So those are the two topics today that we're going to get into. So just so you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. And again, if you got any questions, I will try to read those as I go along. But one of the things that I commonly harp on, and not just here, but even in the office or when I'm giving symposiums or speeches or whatever, I talk about the importance of communication. Communication is something that has to be implemented in every relationship, especially when it comes to the working environment. So when you're talking about effective communication, it is more than just exchanging information. It's much bigger than that. It's about you understanding both ends of the conversation. Whether you're the giver or you're the receiver, you have to understand both ends. So that means, you have to clearly articulate your message if you're the one who's sending the message in a way where that person who's receiving the message understands. And the same goes for them. They have to make sure they receive your message how you intended. And that is where a lot of times the disconnection come in. Because you may mean to say something a certain way, and in your mind, you saying it how you think it should be said, or how you want to relay it, but in reality, that is not how the person received it. They received something completely different. And I mentioned before, you have to make sure they have a clear understanding of the message that's being delivered by you. And if you're the one who's the receiver of the message, you have to make sure you're receiving the message clearly and as expected. So if you are the receiver of a message, there's nothing wrong with saying, okay, let me get this straight. So you're telling me that I need to take the ladder, move it on the left side of the wall, halfway in the center of the building, so I can reach the second story, right? And they can say, yes, that's exactly what I mean. No, you're not going to the second story. You're not moving it to the center of the building. You're moving to the opposite end of the building, and you're going for the first story. So that is how stuff easily get. If you don't verify the message being delivered, then there's a risk, there's a chance that something that you're going to do will be done incorrectly. So it prevents you from doing the work over again. So make sure you have a clear communication of that. So when you communicate with others, we all tend to focus on what we should say, but communication is, especially when it comes to effective communication, it's less about talking and more about listening. So listening well means not just understanding the words, but again, understanding the communication that's being transmitted. So you have to understand both ends. So there are some tips when you want to be an engaged listener. So yes, the person who's delivering the message, they have your undivided attention. You are focused on them. And when that happens, when you listen to what they have to say, you want to stay away from distractions. And it is easy to get distracted when someone's talking to you. Very easy to be distracted. So you want to keep that distraction down to a minimum, if at all possible. So if you can, avoid interruptions. And way too often, we're having dialogue with someone, someone comes in our office or we go to someone's workspace, maybe 15 seconds into the conversation, someone picks up their phone. They send a text, they responded to a text, or they just looking at their phone for whatever reason. Or they listening to you, then they shift to their computer. Oh, let me send this email out real quick. So now it's a distraction. Now you have interruptions. So you want to try to avoid those interruptions. So give them your undivided attention. That means if you have to take your phone, put it on silent, flip it over so you can't see what pops up on the screen. Put your computer to sleep or turn the monitor the other way. That way you avoid distractions. If it's in an office, have them close the door so people can't come in. Hey, I got a quick question. Now, granted, some people may knock, so there are certain things you can avoid, but try to avoid any interruption as possible. Also, you want to show interest, that you are really interested in what they have to say. So how many times have you sat there and someone, you're talking to someone, and again, they looking at you, but then they tend to drift, or they're looking at something else, or they start doing something else, and they don't show that interest. So what happens? How do you feel when that happens? How do you feel when you're talking to someone and the interest just isn't there? So now you feel like what you're saying is on deaf ears. But the same goes for you. If someone on your team is coming to talk to you, what do? Do you show a lack of interest? Do you do these same things that makes them feel like, well, this person don't even want to hear what I have to say? So now you're less interested and you don't want to even continue the conversation. Or you don't have that enthusiasm about this idea that you have that you want to share with your supervisor because they don't seem to be interested. Another thing, when you want to be an active listener or a good listener, pay attention to those verbal cues, those non-verbal cues, whether, the physical expressions, how their eyes drift to the left or to the right. So these are things that you want to pay attention to also. You can see if a person is really disingenuous, so you want to pay attention to that. So there's a lot of things that you really want to pay attention to when you're trying to listen and understand somebody and vice versa. So it goes both ways. So those are things that can help you become a more effective listener. But one thing that I do want you to key in on, and this is just an added tip, and this is something that I share frequently. When you're communicating with somebody, and mainly if you're the listener, if you are the one who's receiving a message, pay close attention to what's not being said. That is where you will find the value in that conversation that just took place. They will say all these pretty things, but they will leave something out. So pay attention to exactly what's being said. So like if someone says, hey, I'm gonna go to lunch, I'm gonna run to the store, then I'm coming right back. Okay. What was not said? What was not said in that was, what store are they running to? If they going to, let's say, Target is 20 minutes away. If they going to Walmart is 30 minutes away. But there's a little grocery store directly across the street that they can walk to in 2 minutes. So those are the things you have to pay attention to. Yeah, I'm gonna run to the store, but I'll be back. I'll be right back. Knowing lunch may be 30 minutes, but if you're going to Target that's 20 minutes away, that takes you 20 minutes to get there, not counting how long it takes you to get to your vehicle. And then you're gonna shop and do whatever you need to do in Target, come back, and then once you park your vehicle, so you see where I'm going with this. So pay attention to the things that are not being shared. The things that they're not saying, that is where you need to pay close attention to. Because in your mind, you processing what they're saying, but you also processing what they're not saying. So that is communication. Just a quick synopsis of effective communication and things to look out for and some kind of tips to become a better listener. Another thing that I want to get into is team building. So what is team building, right? So it's creating that team cohesiveness. So working together towards a common goal, right? So you build your team and create these important strong points within your teams to improve the connection and fluidity of your team. So that is something that is really essential, especially when you're dealing with a person who's filling the supervisor role or leadership role for the first time and trying to find their way. Because it's a learning process and you will make mistakes in the process. So during your team building, you create these bonds that are very beneficial to not just your team, but the organization as a whole. So there are certain things that you can do when it comes to team building. People do a lot of team building games and things of that nature, and it has a lot of benefits to it. So you probably can look online and find some team building activities, but it has so many benefits when it comes to team building. As far as communication, we'll touch on that. Planning skills, motivation, collaboration, etc. So one of the benefits of team building is it improves the communication overall. So on top of the team building process, again, it improves the communication because it helps each team member Because now you're at a point of comfort with your individual team that you were not before the team building exercises. So now you are more receptive. You have a better understanding of some of your team members. So now you may feel more comfortable talking to certain team members about things that you were never willing to talk about before. So that is something that you want to pay attention to. Also, when it comes to increases collaboration, now you focus on collaborating as a team, so it builds that team camaraderie and that cohesion. It also limits the chaos because now you're more receptive to communicate with these individuals and work together towards this common goal. Because some of you have people on your team that you really don't talk to that often, except if it's work related. But now you can kind of have a more general conversation, not necessarily personal unless you choose to take it there, but now you feel more comfortable. And now you can work with this person. Now you learn about this person. You learn their strengths, their weaknesses, certain things that make them tick, things that you may want to bring up, or certain topics that you want to stay away from when you're talking to this individual. And lastly, like I said, there's a slew of things, but the last one I'm going to talk about real quick is miscommunication and preventing misunderstandings. So team building prevent misunderstandings and conflict because, again, now you're more comfortable engaging with your team. Again, you know them better. You're not afraid now to seek advice or ask questions for clarity. You may have had a team member that constantly speaks, but the way they deliver their message, you don't want to ask a question. But through these team building exercises, you learn a different side of them. So now you're more open to ask those questions and then go to them face to face and clear up any misunderstandings, which could be from miscommunication or disagreement about something that doesn't really turn into an argument. Now you're not being standoffish. They're not being standoffish. You're having a communication. You're just talking. You're having open dialogue, talking, having a general conversation with no one raising their voices and things of that nature. Prevent misunderstandings because you got to remember, everyone has a different way of communicating, but also everyone has a different way of receiving those messages. So those are things you need to consider. So if you got a team of 5, it's a good chance that all 5 of those members communicate differently, but it's also a good chance that they receive messages differently also. So hypothetically, you as a supervisor or leader or the person in charge of that team, you have to know each one of those individuals and how they receive communication and how they communicate. And again, you can learn that from getting to know your team members and doing team building activities. Yes, so those are the things that I wanted to talk about today to make sure that, we all on the same page and things of that nature. And I just want to give you some insight, and I'm looking at a comment, you have this issue with communication. So again, understand the process of communication and how you can help build it, how you can help improve it, how can you bring your team together on one accord. Again, because some people, as the post that mentioned that I'm going to do a live chat, it talked about people don't listen to understand, they listen to respond. And that is a problem when it comes to communication. So I hear what you're saying when you start talking to me, but after those first few words, if I don't like it, I'm not really listening. So I'm going to tune out what you're saying. And now I'm formulating my response because it's going to be a little aggressive, or it's going to come off in a way that it probably shouldn't. But since I'm not listening to understand what you're trying to say or allowing you the opportunity to finish, and that's where people go wrong when it comes to communication. So listen to understand, let them speak their piece. And if you have any questions at the end, ask those questions for clarity before you respond if you're unsure. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you all coming in today to share this moment with me. Again, I appreciate you all for taking the time to support my page. I appreciate you all for it. Excuse me, but hopefully you all have a wonderful day. And if you got any questions, again, feel free to send me a message or whatever, and I will respond to it. But other than that, thank you again, and you all have a wonderful day.